Lifeweaver still sucks. Now, the good news is that a lot of things have been moving in the right direction with the hero, and I honestly want to start off this video with a lot of credit to the Blizzard developers who, despite releasing a hero that was in best and alpha stage, respectfully, they did make some changes and they made them pretty quickly. Taking a look at the patch notes from April 25th, obviously tightening the spread at range while as reducing damage, kind of a hit or miss there. The projectile size was reduced, but the spread pattern was adjusted, so that's good. But the big ones were obviously the improving of the hero swap, the weapon swap, excuse me, an adjustment from rejuvenating dash to jump, and as well as the ability to cancel the pedal platform at any point in time. All quality of life adjustments, which we're a big fan of. I think there's been a little bit of controversy with the dash usage and the primary fire, whether it's actually better, but I'm not going to get into that today. The main point is that they were responsive to that, which is really, really good to hear. A couple things like Tree of Life, the health increase, a healing pulse increase as well, remove the passive. All good changes that should have been even a beta stage at best, but you know what? We have to give credit for Blizzard for at least communicating well with us and making these changes swiftly. Now, that being said, the hero still is bad, and I want to give a disclaimer here that obviously this falls kind of into the Wrecking Ball category. We have a hero that is so unique and their execution of their role that a lot of people are going to overreact in terms of exactly how bad the hero actually is. I do think that the hero has potential, and that there are several things about the hero that the hero is strong at. I think that the average player will have a very, very hard time figuring it out, and ultimately it will be up to the streamers and OTPs to actually figure out all the little niches about where the hero is good. That being said, whereas Wrecking Ball felt more enjoyable and fun to play, Lifeweaver is, for the majority of people, is not going to feel as fun to play, even if you're struggling to figure out. There's just nothing that's super, super engaging about the vast majority of his kit. And the other thing is that even when played at a high level, I don't feel that this is anywhere remotely close to Wrecking Ball in terms of the ceiling of the hero, even upon release. I think the hero is just still rather objectively weak. Let's talk about what needs to be changed. So most of you might have already seen my Everything Wrong with Lifeweaver video. Most of those points are going to apply here. I'm going to be a little bit more focused on my feedback about what needs to change, and a little bit less broad about everything wrong with the hero, and more about, well, what actually needs to be changed. So let's talk about the good things here, things that feel good with this hero. The first thing is the ranged heal. So right now, the ranged heal is really, really nice. It's auto lock. You can heal people almost essentially through walls. It tracks them through the wall if you're able to lock on the release. And the fact that you're able to heal 65 at this range while the target is moving, it's pretty powerful. It's something that you can really utilize, especially against very mobile tanks and especially mobile DPS. Tracer, Sombra, Genji, Echo, Pharah, all of those heroes feel pretty amazing to work on with Lifeweaver. It's not only easy to heal them, but it does an effective amount of healing per second for the most part. Moving on from there, I do think things like the pedal have opportunity and are enjoyable to work with as well. And then using Life Grip is surprisingly impactful. It's definitely something that I talked about in my critiques of the hero, is that while I don't like Life Grip as an ability still now, I do think its potential for playmaking is pretty amazing. In fact, I would argue that the Life Grip is the most interesting part of the hero, yet also the most controversial. It is definitely the ability that feels the most satisfying to get good value out of when it does happen. So Life Grip, definitely controversial, but when it hits its peaks, it's a fun ability to use. The ranged heal, as I said, is really good. Now let's talk about the not so fun parts. Okay, so actually, I just thought of something I need to add in here. So let's start with the neutral. So the thing that makes supports in Overwatch really unique is that they have really strong utility and that they're not heal bots, right? It's the ML7 thing. It's something that I got a pretty big Twitch clip years ago talking about there are no healers in Overwatch, right? And the problem with Lifeweaver is it doesn't apply very much to him. He actually, in the neutral, unless you're finding opportunities to hit big pedals, big pulls, there is nothing to do but heal. There is nothing to do but heal. And there isn't a single hero in the game that functions like that. Mercy relies heavily off of Guardian Angel and damage boost in the neutral. Requires a lot of her cooldowns, a lot of her movement, and her utility comes through the damage boost specifically. So even Mercy, who is the most heal bot hero in Overwatch, is the vast majority of her kit comes from the utility of damage boost and movement. Lifeweaver has nothing. Lifeweaver, unfortunately, with grip, and to a lesser extent Petal, those are more instanced and situational neutral cooldowns. So in other words, if I'm looking in a neutral fight, attack or defense, what do? Well, Life Grip is not something that you can necessarily go out of your way to use. Now, SVB put out a really excellent video. I would highly recommend checking it out on his thoughts on Lifeweaver. And one of the things that he was discovering is that you can actually use pull and pedal to take a good position and pull people to that good position, controlling the map through that. And while that's probably one of the most potent things that you can do with Lifeweaver, even then, it's extremely niche and not something that you could pull off consistently, no pun intended. And it's not even something that's consistently good, and it's actually extremely map situational. So you will find yourself many times with Lifeweaver on many maps struggling to do anything besides just spam heal. Even the fact that the weapon swap between the damage and the heal has a slight delay means that you're going to be slowing down and not able to even weave in damage while you're healing. So Lifeweaver doesn't do a lot of damage, and he doesn't have a lot of neutral utility. You see, not every hero in Overwatch needs to get utility through damage. I'm totally fine with that. I think if you look at somebody like a Mercy, as controversial as Damage Boost is, she is a good example of a hero that gets a lot of utility without just having to heal. But unfortunately, Lifeweaver doesn't do that. His utility is more when opportunity strikes, and then if it doesn't strike, if you don't have the opportunity, if you don't have the need, the hero doesn't do anything, just heals. And that's extremely boring. Your impact is low. The other thing that's kind of piggybacking off of that is the niche value of the utility, tons of massive downtime. As we said, that there are circumstances where the utility is useful, but there are way too many circumstances where the utility is not useful. If you don't have an overextending DPS or tank, your life get value is going to tank. If you don't have a good high ground that you can move about with pedal, your value is going to tank. If, ironically, with a hero with this big of a hitbox and this survivable, if you don't have people trying to dive you so that you can use your pedal defensively, pedal is one of the worst cooldowns in all of the game. It has immense potential in very certain circumstances, but there's also complete matchups and entire maps, specifically sniper comps, where the pedal doesn't do anything. It's actually might as well not even be there, and that's a problem. You see, there aren't many cooldowns in the game. In fact, I can't think of a single one where it's actually completely useless outside of certain circumstances. Even niche ones like Maywall, certain circumstances where Maywall isn't as impactful. Venomite and Widowmaker, not the best cooldown whatsoever. But you very rarely have a cooldown that actually just isn't used, and that unfortunately is something that we have with Lifeweaver's pedal in a lot of circumstances. You've created a very powerful hero in very certain niche situations, and he's just garbage and everything else. And there's also arguments about whether even in those niche situations where he feels good, he's still probably nowhere near the best pick for the situation. Okay? Big thing with support as well is controlling space. So what I mean by controlling space is controlling flanks, controlling angles, helping high grounds. And every hero in Overwatch either has some form of range or mobility. If you're a fan of my channel, you know exactly what these terms mean. But essentially, it's the ability to control off angles and flanks and help off angles and flanks by being quick and fast. Think Kiriko, think Lucio, think Mercy's Guardian Angel, or you have the range to be able to assist people without actually having to be on top of them. Think Baptiste, think Zen, think Ana. Now, he does have the range with his heal, but a lot of his value through life grip and his pull means that he's actually limited with how much space that he can actually control. Even after the buff, his weapon spread still doesn't feel impactful. And if the WAP doesn't have the ability to immediately take high ground and then pull people onto that high ground, if we're talking about a rather flat map, there's not a lot that you can do with life grip or pedal. So again, it's a situation where when it comes to controlling space and controlling the map, he's probably the worst support in the game at that. And it's a very odd thing to see. It's a departure from the original strategy of the game, which I think is problematic. A couple other niche things I'm gonna nitpick as well. The charge heal I found exhausting. Doing this for, I believe, over a dozen games yesterday was just honestly very tiresome. I don't think the amount that he heals is necessarily the problem, but having to charge it is, I don't know what the solution is here, but it's rough. Obviously, the hitbox is still too big for a hero that is supposed to be a support and needs to be trying to take space in angles he can't do it because he's so fat. Passive, obviously, I'm glad the passive that we had was gone, but would be nice if we had another passive to play around. And I also think as well that the range on the heal and the pull might need to be a little bit longer. Maybe this is just my opinion here, but I have found many times where I wanted to pull or wanted to heal somebody and it felt like they were just 2, 3, maybe at most 5 meters out of my range. It was really frustrating. I'm like, so maybe something to consider there. So what are solutions here? Well, let me give you one more thing. So again, I want to talk about the comparison to Mercy before I wrap this up. A lot of people say that not every hero in Overwatch has to do damage, and I think that's 100% accurate. However, when you compare that to a hero like Mercy, think about how mechanically intensive that this hero can be with super jumps, with movement, with constant uptime and your damage boost and your healing, and being able to control off angles. Lifeweaver doesn't have that engagement. He has simply too much downtime. So Mercy, who's even one of the more, I wouldn't say passive, but definitely more supportive roles out of all the supports, at least indirectly supportive, she's so much more engaging during fights than Lifeweaver is, and Lifeweaver feels too niche in terms of where he contributes and where he does not. So let's talk about suggestions here. Unfortunately, I think a lot of these suggestions or a lot of these problems are very difficult to solve without completely changing his identity. I think the first thing that I would say that objectively needs to happen, a couple of things, is that you need to shrink his hitbox a little bit, and you also need to somehow, I wouldn't necessarily say increase the damage. I'm not sure what I'm looking for damage wise, but he doesn't do enough damage. You literally cannot win a duel. Like, you legitimately have a better chance a lot of the time of winning a duel with Mercy pistol than you do with his weapon a lot of the time. There needs to be something that his gun contributes other than what it currently does. The damage is atrocious. It shouldn't be put you at an advantage in the DPS, but if I outplay the DPS, I should at least have a chance to force a cooldown or clear them out. Right now, it is probably the worst weapon or second worst weapon in all of Overwatch 2 by far. Not a good thing to have, especially considering now that we have the opportunity to switch back and forth easily. Well, why would he even bother switching, right? I watched an ML7 game the other day. The guy had literally 0 LMs and a full 3-3 escort map. I think it was Power ESO. That's just insanity to me, like the amount of damage this hero does. Anyway, number one, that and hitbox. Moving on from there, I don't have a specific solution, but I can give you the spirit of the solution that I would solve. He needs something in the neutral. There needs to be some sort of neutral value. Either, this sounds like heresy, but what if Life Grip was on a lower cooldown? I'm not necessarily saying that that would be a good idea, but if Life Grip was on at least a lower cooldown, lower than 20 seconds, there would at least be something that I could do without feeling like, oh no, I used my Life Grip to control the map because I wanted to do something, right? Oh no, now I didn't have it for fill in the blank. It's such a long cooldown that a lot of times it's actually pretty scary to actually use it in any other situation outside of emergency. Lifeweaver has too much downtime. We need something, we need some form of utility, either indirect, whether toying with the cooldowns that he has, that actually fills that downtime so much more efficiently than it currently is. Whether that's toying with Petal and Life Grip, the abilities that we already have, finding some way to work in a passive that allows it, buffing the damage. There's just too much downtime, and the major problem with Lifeweaver, this is the major problem, and I know this is partially subjective, but the number one problem with Lifeweaver out of all the things is he's just not very fun to play. It's not just that he's super weak and super trash and Life Grip is bad, and all of those things are debatable and there's solutions, but I'm concerned that we have a hero that is going to be niche but also not going to be played very much because people are not going to enjoy playing him. You see, as bad or as weird of a niche as Wrecking Ball was on release, he was very fun to play. This hero doesn't feel fun to play. And I think if you look at the amount of downtime that he has, how weak his weapon is, the charge to heal, the clunkiness that still exists in the hero, I think it's not really a mystery. And the problem with that is that if he's not fun to play, well then, if you're considering it from Blizzard's perspective, why create the hero at all? The number one thing a hero needs to be is fun to play. More important than balance, strong, weak, OP, it has to be fun. And they've knocked the ball out of the park with Kiriko, with Jungle Queen, with Sojourn, and they've crapped the bed with this one. So hopefully to see some changes to the neutral. Quality of life changes still needed, but honestly more important than anything else is finding something that it can do with this hero and the neutral to keep people more engaged during those fights when Life Grip isn't immediately an option. I hope that makes sense. We don't need to overreact and overbuff this hero at this point, but I do think that this hero needs something to keep people engaged. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I'll chat with you guys later.